Good evening, everyone. My name is David Lepofsky. I'm Chair of the Special Education Advisory Committee for the Toronto District School Board. I want to welcome you to our September 8th, 2025 meeting of the Special Education Advisory Committee, or SEAC. Beside me is Tracy O'Regan, who is the Vice Chair and representing Community Living Toronto. I'm also representing Ontario parents of visually impaired children. To move along quickly, I'm going to do have us do quick introductions of who's in the room and add a microphone, either staff or SEAC member. If you are a SEAC member, can you please say, identify yourself as such? Tracy, I just said who you are. If we could just go over to my right.
Nora.
Hi, sorry. My name is Nora Green and I represent Inclusion Action Ontario.
My name is Jessica Miklos. I'm the alternative representative for ABC Ontario, representing gifted students.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Anne. I'm the alternate representative for Epilepsy Toronto.
Hi, it's Steve Lynette. I represent Epilepsy Toronto.
And Mandy.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome back SEAC members and the public to the 2025-26 school year. Nandy Palmer, Executive Superintendent, Special Education and Inclusion.
And Leanne.
She's online.
Oh, okay. Could we start by asking Tracy to lead us in a land acknowledgement?
Thank you. If you can stand
As you're able.
as you're able. We acknowledge, I can't see that, Leanne. We acknowledge we live on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, thank you very much, Leanne, for making it bigger, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's do the opening procedural stuff. Does anybody either online or in person have any conflicts of interest to declare on tonight's agenda? Anyone? I'm advised there are none. Let us approve the agenda if we may. I'll be speaking about it more in a minute. Could we have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Jessica, seconder. Nora.
Bronwyn also, motion.
Okay, Bronwyn. Any comments or could we proceed to a vote? Let's have a vote. All in favor of approving the agenda, please either raise your hands here or indicate online. Opposed, if any? We have it.
Bronwyn can ask.
Okay,
Sorry, Bronwyn, are you opposing?
Oh, no, sorry. I was trying to raise our hand to agree.
okay. So agenda approved. I'm just going to ask if somebody doesn't have themselves on mute at home, and it'd be great if you could make sure you do. All right, minutes of our June meeting. Could we have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
Nora.
Nora, seconder, please.
Latoya.
Oh, Latoya. I don't see.
Latoya, all right. Any changes needed to the minutes or could we proceed to a vote? None being identified for me?
None.
Okay, then let's have a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your hands if you're in the room or indicate online, please.
Yep, we're good.
All right, minutes are approved. Let me begin with my chair's report, and then the rest of this meeting will be mainly devoted to one topic. And it's topic number one, I think, on everybody's mind. But let me just treat my chair's report as being an intro to that discussion. As we all know, at the end of June, the provincial government chose to assume control and management of the Toronto District School Board under the powers it has in the Education Act. And it appointed a supervisor who essentially takes the lead role is the senior person in charge of managing the Toronto District School Board. This led in turn to the elected trustees who previously formed the Board of Trustees governing the Toronto District School Board to essentially have their powers completely taken away, their official status taken away. They are now private citizens, but they have no status at the board. And this has raised for all parents serious questions about what this is going to mean for their child. From the perspective of, I want to speak, however, from the perspective of students with special education needs or disabilities. They number 40,000 or more. We have more students with disabilities or special education needs, a TDSB, than some school boards have in their total student population, a disability or none. And our committee, the Special Education Advisory Committee, is constituted under provincial regulations, as is our counterparts at every board, as being responsible to give advice to the board on what needs to be done to improve the educational opportunities for these students. We don't have any power to do anything, to change anything. We only have the power to listen, recommend, and try to persuade. We've always done this in our capacity of working with staff and look forward to continuing to do so. But the trustees have always played an important role in our work. And they are now eliminated from our activities for at least the next year. One role they played was always having, I believe, 3 members of our committee being trustees. And that played important roles for us in that they brought to us an understanding of what their fellow trustees were focusing on. And we in turn expected them to bring our concerns to their fellow trustees. But as well, other trustees, and especially over the past year and a half, an increasing number of other trustees have been coming to SEAC and even taking part at times in our discussions because they're concerned about the needs of students with special education needs and disabilities. And they're frankly wanting to hear what we had to say. There are additional ways in which they played an important role. We have, at this committee, tried to give advice to the staff and to work collegially. There are times that has resulted in change. There are times, however, that staff have come back and not been, have decided not to take the actions that this committee recommended. And in a democracy, we had an important avenue if that happened, which is to go to the trustees by a formal motion and a recommendation and to make our case. No guarantee they'd listen, no guarantee they'd act on it, but it was an important avenue. And it is backed by the fact that trustees' meetings like ours are public, live streamed, and therefore available for the public generally to watch and to hear. That includes not only voters in their capacity as voters, but included other parents, included other students, and included TDSB staff. And any number of us got feedback from any number of them when we took these public steps. That's gone. As well, parents or other members of the public have had the right to go to a committee meeting of the Toronto District School Board of the Trustees and to make delegations, either as individuals or as groups of individuals organized on a topic, or as organizations, and to raise their concerns, and to do so with the added benefit of it being in public and live stream. That's gone. What do we do? What do we do under this new regime? Well, that's going to be the focus of our discussion tonight. In addition to those informal routes, there were roles the trustees played in the system of governance at the Toronto District School Board. Some were mandated by the Education Act. Some are mandated by the policies of the Ministry of Education. And some, no doubt, came from the Toronto District School Board's own internal processes, such as holding town halls or public meetings or educational sessions. Formally, under the Education Act, if a student has been excluded from school, that is to say, the board has refused to admit them to school, under Section 265 of the Education Act, topic that has special significance for students with disabilities and that we've raised at this table any number of times. Under the Education Act, that same section, they have a right to appeal to the Board of Trustees to appeal the refusal to admit them to school, a fundamental right to an education. They had the right to go over the heads of staff to the trustees. As well, under the Concerned Parents Protocol, about which we've spoken a great deal, if a parent feels that their child's disability or special education related needs are not being met, either because the board staff won't agree to meet it, or because they said they would, but didn't, if that's their view, right or wrong, the ministry mandated and the board has a policy or a procedure called the Concerned Parents Protocol. To paraphrase, you raise it with the teacher. If unsuccessful, raise it with the principal. If unsuccessful, go to the superintendent. And if unsuccessful there, go to the elected trustee. And the trustees in that role could play a system navigator, advocate, problem solver, or broker, maybe even a mediator, to try to solve the situation. Well, some parents' objections had merit, some don't, but that was the process. And when we tried to get it improved at this table, one of the things we've been told is that that process is good, and from the board's point of view, it worked. And the resort to the trustee as part of that has been presented to us as an important component of that. It's gone. We've gotten a memo last Friday that the ministry has mandated that now those concerns will be can be directed by email to the provincially appointed supervisor. So we've got a world which is changed. Our mission here is not to editorialize on it or go take positions on whether the province was right or wrong. That's open to all of us to do elsewhere, but that's not our agenda here. Our agenda here is to figure out what is being done in this new world, what's being provided for our kids in this new world, and to provide advice or input if there are areas where that could be improved. To that end, and I want to give an illustration, and then we can dive right into our agenda. To that end, I want to just give an illustration, and I've circulated a chair's report. And at the end of my presentation now, I'm going to ask that it become part of the record in the minutes, if you agree. I provided an illustration of where this can and indeed this change can and has made a difference. Last May, TDSB staff advised us that they were planning to make a change to the special education planning, very weighty and detailed document that the board files with the school board, with the ministry every year. And they wanted to essentially raise the total number of kids that would be allowed in 2 categories of special education class. Now, don't want to debate here the wisdom of that staff decision. There was a lot of concern around this table, and right or wrong, we had those concerns. And staff, however, staff was required to consult us on the plan. And ultimately, as I understand it, the trustees had to approve the plan. So I appeared before the trustees on your behalf and filed a written submission, which is part of my chair's report, last June, when the trustees were going to decide whether or not to vote to approve the plan. And I argued why it was a bad idea and why they shouldn't approve it. Staff recommended that they approve it and made the arguments in support of their decision. I raised concerns this could be problematic for some students. Staff argued it wouldn't be. But ultimately, the trustees voted. And for the first time in any recommendation that, at least when I've been chair, we brought to the trustees and staff disagreed with, the trustees overruled staff, and a majority of them voted to say no. This was an important step in a democratic process. And yet, what happened this summer under the supervisor, and I only found out sometime after, is that the supervisor reversed that decision, approved the plan. But that is an illustration, maybe just a bit of a labyrinthian one, but an illustration of how things have changed. That's what we know because it's documented. But here's the thing. Under the regulation under which we are created, or the Special Education Advisory Committee is created, it's a provincial regulation. It's not optional for for school boards, whether governed by trustees or by a supervisor. It's mandatory. It provides that the board is not to make a decision on a recommendation from the Special Education Advisory Board Committee without affording us an opportunity to be heard. I'm paraphrasing. Now, we did have that opportunity to be heard in several cases when we've taken measures to the trustees. In some cases, they voted not to approve our recommendation. And last June, they voted to say yes. But that's the fair process. In this case, if the new supervisor is essentially taking over in some way the role of the trustees, then it's my view on your behalf that the supervisor should afford us also that chance to be heard. And we were not. I did not get a chance to speak to him. I did not get a chance to present our written submission to him. We were not at there was no open meeting when it happened. We just found out about it. And similarly, you didn't get a chance either. So what do? I wrote everybody on SEAC a couple of weeks ago and said, we're going to have a meeting. I wanted to devote it to what's the world like now and how can we best succeed? Our goal is to do the best with it. And I've just tried to state the facts fairly, but let's tell me what questions you'd like to ask. I have synthesized them into a list of 15 They're attached to the report, and they are going to be the basis of our discussion tonight. You're not limited to them. I invited the supervisor to come and be here to speak to us and provide answers, take your questions. I regret, I was advised just now, up until now, I didn't know if he would be attending. I understand he's not. And so what I've worked out with the staff is, to the extent that he couldn't, we would ask the staff to speak to these questions. In doing so, there may be some they can answer and there may be some they can't. They don't know yet, it's not clear yet, or it's out of their hands. And we can't expect them to tell us any more than they can honestly know. And so what I'd like to do is essentially pass it over to staff. I don't think we need to treat the 15 questions as a script or something we have to be rigidly bound by. And if staff want to address these issues in a different order or however they like, I think that would be great. I want to give you as much time as you want to speak at the outset. I want to limit it to tight timelines that I'm usually notorious for asking. It's frustrating for some. And then I want to go around the room, the physical room and the virtual room, and invite people to ask questions to follow up, whether it's on these 15 or if it's some other aspect. And the only thing I'm going to ask people to do is to focus your questions on what staff are doing under the new regime relative to our students, what their opinions might be on whether this change is good or bad. I don't think is either going to help us or appropriate to put them in a position to answer. And if I were them, I'd say, really, I don't want to, my job is to do my job. So I think we could be extremely respectful of that. But on the other hand, we've got serious questions. So I'm happy, Nandy, if you want to take the lead on it or however you wish to deal with it. I am delighted to pass the virtual microphone over to you.
Thanks, David, and welcome again, everyone. We're really excited to be collaborating and working in partnership with SEAC to support our students with special education needs and or disabilities. So I am joined by Associate Director Luis Sarisco, who's online, but I will begin by saying that staff continue to work to serve students and their families while we're under supervision. So for us, it is our usual work and our usual efforts, and we're working alongside school-based staff to support students and to address parent concerns. So I wanted to put that out there, that we are doing our work as we would if we were not under supervision. And I want to say that clearly because we are here to do the work and to serve students, and also to reassure SEAC members as well as the public that we are doing what we need to be doing for the approximately 40,000 students and others that we need to be serving. So I'll pass it over to Associate Director Luis Sarisco to see how she'd like to approach this part of the agenda. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Nandy, and Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to school. We are thrilled to be having our first SEAC meeting, and so glad you are able to join us this evening. And going forward, we hope you had a really restful summer with your family and loved ones. And I'm very certain that the children and families that you support are really glad to be back in school, and we are so excited to welcome them back. David, I'm hoping that I'm able to provide some reassurance to you and all members of SEAC in regards to the questions that were shared with us, and in that really our business, as Nandy has said, carries on. And our focus on students carries on. The processes that are in place are really have been maintained, particularly that that involve SEAC and our interaction with SEAC. So SEAC, of course, is a statutory committee. And you have a responsibility and we have a responsibility to be sharing with you any matters that relate to special education programs, supports, and services. That relationship is going to maintain. Our meetings are going to continue. So this is 1 out of 10 meetings that we have the benefit of being together to talk about the work that we are doing. There really have been no operational changes other than the ones that you mentioned in relation to the special education plan. We opened based on our staffing that we talked about. The support levels remain the same, and our duties to SEAC remain the same. So when we're developing our budget for this year, we will still have our budget committee, and we will still be bringing that forward to SEAC for conversation. Our special education plan will also follow the same process. So just wanting to reassure that our processes remain strong and unchanged. There are some things, because we no longer have a board of trustees, that we will need to defer to the supervisor for guidance. We've not yet heard much detail about that, so much more will be coming, I have no doubt, as the ministry and Rohit are working collaboratively in regards to how to support legislative statutory committees. Of course, TDSB is 1 out of 5 boards under supervision, so I think the relationship for us, they may be thinking about all 5 boards similarly, and what guidance for support committee members would need. In regards to how SEAC provides advice to the board, and remember, sometimes that is a small b operationally, depending upon what you're wanting to give guidance on. So that would be to Nandy and myself, and sometimes it's a big B, meaning the governance element, and those recommendations would be going to Rohit as the supervisor, and we would be facilitating your recommendations as we normally would, except instead of going to the chair of the board, it would go to the supervisor for his consideration. In regards to exclusions, so similarly, processes, our PR is still there, our procedure is still there, and we would, if an exclusion appeal were to occur, and remember, we've shared with you they're very, very small in number annually, but if that were to occur, we would engage with Rohit for direction to know that an appeal was happening, and seek his guidance on how he wanted to have that considered. So I'll stop there. I'm just kind of scanning what other questions that you had, and again, much has not changed. So parents still, if they had a concern, would be reaching out to their school principal and their superintendent, and of course we support centrally from that through the parent concern protocol. So David, I'll stop. Is there anything in particular you would like to hear more about?
Okay, let me maybe just, and I'm looking at the same 15 questions, and some have been clarified, and some it would be great if you could speak to. One of the questions that I had, and that a number of my colleagues had, was this: before, when the budget was being developed for this year, you made strong and important commitments that the number of special ed staff will not be reduced, period. And in the current academic year. And I wonder if, since the supervisor was appointed because the provincial government wasn't happy with the budget of this board. Is that still the currently going on, or is there a possibility that there will be cuts?
Thanks, David. I can't talk about next year's budget, but what I can say is that the budget was approved. And of course, as you know, our budget is completely tied to staffing. So that staffing, those staffing levels have been distributed to our schools. And of course, we always have what's called a holdback. So that also is within NANDY's leadership authority to be releasing over the course of the year. And that holdback, David, is to be supporting incoming students that are new, that perhaps need additional support as our enrollment fluctuates, and also to be responsive to be needs students as they emerge through time. So the staffing as was approved is still maintained. So I hope that again is a reassuring statement.
No, that's very helpful. Now, the other thing, and I don't want to monopolize this, in about 1 minute, I'm going to open it up to other people to jump in, and I may come back as time goes on, but an issue that has been raised when we did a town hall last year, and by any number of SEAC members, and frankly by staff, is that special education funding is not meeting, provincial funding is not meeting the level of actual spending that the board needs to undertake. And at various times, we've had folks come from the board come to us, staff and trustees, and encourage us to write the minister and say, there needs to be more funding. You now have a supervisor in place from the province. And when I wrote him this summer on behalf of SEAC, I tried to turn his mind to this, because now it's the same province that sets those levels that is also managing how they're spent. So I'm wondering to what extent there's an opportunity here to make the case to the province internally, now that they're on the hook for actually running the board, to fund special education more robustly.
Thanks for your advocacy, as always, and I know each of you care very deeply about supports for our students. Like most boards, the TDSB spends more than the sweatered amount, and we're approximately $38 million outside of that sweatered amount. From the ministry's lens, they would say, well, that's expected, because that amount is intended to be protected, but students have a right to all of the other funds that the ministry provides for our students. So we're not atypical, David. Trustees have absolutely been strong advocates to the ministry to increase funding for students with special education needs. I have heard the minister say that he has asked the supervisors to look at the funding model as it relates to the boards that they supervise, and that he is open to be hearing about suggestions for improvement. So I think, I know, and you've shared with SEAC members that you are meeting with the supervisor. I think it's on the 10th. So I think it is an opportunity for you to be sharing your perspective and be the strong advocate we know you to be for our students. I would just want to clarify in some of the descriptions within your 15 questions, you talk about that staff articulated that there is no funding source for students who don't have an exceptionality. So just want to take a moment to talk about how that is technically correct, but the inference, I would say, needs some clarification. Mr. Snyder, Controller Snyder is correct in saying that the funding formula does not say students who have no exceptionality are, and here's the technical algorithm to count those students. Instead, what the province has is actually a very, very sophisticated funding formula that's made up of a series of components. One of the largest and the most important component is a formula that says every student that is enrolled in the board, regardless of whether they have special education needs or not, whether they're a multi-language learner, it doesn't matter. It's the enrollment that matters, is given a equivalent of a sum of money. And that is again, the largest amount of the special education grant. It's called the per pupil amount. And the philosophy that is behind that funding formula and that element of the funding formula is recognizing that a school board needs to be responsive to the needs of their population. And there will be students who don't have known exceptionalities or known disabilities at a particular moment in time, yet we have a duty to be supporting students who are demonstrating need. And so in that sense, I would say that the ministry does have funding connected to the special education grant for all children who are demonstrating need, and that we put supports in place. So just wanted to use the opportunity to clarify. So back to you, Chair.
Yeah, that's helpful. I would like to follow up on that. I miss, if people will indulge me for 1 second, then if we could take a speakers list. Okay, but please indicate if you'd like to ask questions, or I can carry on your behalf. I've got your questions you've shared with me, but I don't want to monopolize the meeting if people want to jump in. With respect to the issue about student funding for students without who have a disability, but it doesn't fit within the arbitrary definition of, my word arbitrary, definition of exceptionality the ministry uses. There are any number of those students at the board. They have accommodation needs. And I had asked Mr. Snyder, the head of budget for the budget whiz for the board, when he last spoke to us, if there is a line item in the TDSB budget for the costs of accommodating those students, and he said no, there wasn't. Whether or not there's allocations from the ministry that could be used for that, the question I was presenting was, what's the board planning to be sure that they cover those costs? And that is a gap that I think we do need to address, and it would be helpful in this budget cycle. The regulations that create us require SEAC to be consulted or have input into the budget. In past years, that's taken the form of the senior budget person, Craig Snyder, essentially coming and describing the budget. It's not like we're given points where we could give meaningful advice and it has an effect on the budget. We ask questions basically to get understanding. I'm interested, I would like to see the appointment of the supervisor as providing SEAC with an opportunity to improve things that we couldn't get improved before. And one way would be to, since the supervisor's mandate is taking a hard look at the budget, to take a hard look at the budgeting process. And if we're to be given input, not just saying, hey, you can give input into some portal on the web, but how to actually talk to the decision makers about questions that would influence what they actually do with the budget. And Louise, I don't expect you're in a position to answer the how, but I'd like to ask if you would take, on behalf of staff, a position to senior management to open up, to create a more, let's just say, a more open process for us to not just be told what it is and ask clarifying questions, but actually do something where we get input into it before the decisions on it are made. And we're in a position to do that now because A, the supervisor has this mandate, and B, it's not like the trustees have to vote on something before it happens. It's the supervisor who's got to approve the next year's budget. So I'm wondering if you could just at least reflect on whether that's something you could take further up on our behalf.
Thanks, David. I'll speak to this part. So as you know, any feedback that we receive, we would be taking back to the supervisor, and the supervisor will give us a response to bring back to SEAC, and that could be the supervisor or a delegate themselves coming or asking staff to communicate. However, I do want to flag as well that SEAC has a budget working group. So through that budget working group as well, we would hope to strike that again as we do every school year. Some years it's kind of not been as active as others. So shout out or a call out for members for the budget working group. And we would also be taking that back. So as Louise mentioned earlier, and we had shared with you last week, as much as possible and as many questions as we can answer tonight, we will. And there are others that we would need to take back. But please rest assured that any feedback given or any questions brought to staff will be taken back to the supervisor if we're not able to answer or if we don't have direction on something specific. But there are ways and mechanisms that SEAC can use in addition to providing feedback to Craig Snyder, who will continue to come as he does every year to get that feedback, such as the SEAC budget working group as well. Thanks.
Great idea. And I'm going to take your shout out and shout it out. Could people indicate by email or some way to Leanne if you'd like to be on a budget working group? And your job in that is to essentially take our voice forward on the call for us or to get input into how budget decisions are made before they're made. And we can follow up, pardon me, on that after the meeting. One of the ways in which, sorry, do we have any raised hands?
Yeah, so we have Nora and Bronwyn.
Okay, Nora and then Bronwyn.
David, if I could jump in,
Sure.
I posted in the chat a really helpful document. It's a simple guide to the special education funding formula for Ontario. So for folks who want to do a deep dive, it's really very helpful, and you'll see some of the components and how they're made. Back to you.
Great. I'll take it on faith that a simple guide makes it simple to understand. Nora and then Bronwyn. And if other people want to chime in, just raise your hand or indicate it, and Tracy will take you down. Go ahead, Nora.
Thank you. I guess I have a few things I wanted to say. Number one, I did want to apologize to staff for your having to be in this position where you're answering questions that do not pertain to your role, because I appreciate that for you, how you function and operate has essentially been maintained, and that you're bringing the same, hard work ethic you bring every year, regardless of supervision or trustees. So, I appreciate that, but I think to say procedures that specifically reference trustees are functionally not changed is not an accurate description, to be fair. I think when trustees have performed a role where they are public facing, they have contact information that's out to the public, they have meetings, people can delegate. David sort of discussed all this, but I want to say that's not apples and apples to a person who so far looks like the Great Oz. There's no public website or email. I understand that in a robocall that an email was provided to families for the supervisor, but I suggest that it should take the place of the trustees on the parent of concern protocol at the bottom of that list. Otherwise, that has functionally been changed. I would argue that while exclusions may have been a small number and people may have felt that, suspensions are not. And suspensions have been disproportionately impacting students with special education needs. So that pertains very much to our population, and trustees also played a role in that process. I guess, so I want to know, is this committee going to have the ability when staff go and sort of you express our views to the supervisor, is our chair going to have an opportunity to present our perspective as opposed to just the staff presenting our perspective? So for sure, every time after every meeting. And then I also want to make sure that I haven't heard anybody explain how special education review will be impacted about this. So if the supervisor's deciding the budget needs to change for special education, and let's hypothetically say they feel that you have been overly generous, is a special education review going to be sharing the data and the outcomes of kids receiving service, which is what we were hoping would happen in the review. And I think that's about it. Oh, and I had one last question as we were talking about, I've always hated the special education is underfunded argument, because I've explained why, because I do agree that they're entitled to all the other monies in the board. This is on top of that. But I'm also curious if special education staff in schools support non-special education students. So are special education staff out supporting kids who don't have IEPs? So those are kind of my big things. Will their contact information go on the website in the place of trustees? You've said David will be able to talk to the supervisor on behalf of us. And how are suspensions affected? And does special ed staff serve kids who aren't special ed?
Hey, Nandy, there's a bunch of questions in there. What if you and Louise want to talk about how, or figure out between you how you'd like to respond? Go.
Thanks. Nora, I'll start, and Louise, I'll start, and please jump in. So with regards to special ed, I'll go backwards, Nora.
Thanks.
Staff supporting students who do not have IEPs, the answer in short could be yes, because we do have families that do not want to put their child on an IEP, for example, for lots of different reasons, families with intersecting identities, personal lived experiences, and we have a moral, legal, and ethical obligation to support students. So my quick response to that would be yes. As Louise said earlier, we support students that require supports. But as you know, in terms of when we allocate staffing to schools, we actually look at the students who require special education needs in terms of whether or not they're identified, because we also have students who are not identified who are on IEPs as well. So it's a needs-based model, and our role is to support anyone that requires support.
Can I ask a clarification? So I guess, how do you track your service then for the students who don't have IEPs? So are they indicated they're a special education student, but they don't have an IEP? I'm only hyper concerned about this because recently I've had journalists ask me why special education numbers are declining, and yet parents are so anxious about how thinly spread the services, and I suspect it's because we're serving kids and not counting them. Is that accurate?
I would say not to a large degree. However, we do have another mechanism in place, which is the ILP, or the Individual Learning Plan. In some boards, they refer to them as a growth plan, as an example. But the onus with that is it's on the teacher to implement and try a number of assessment and instructional strategies which are personalized and precise to that student. So there are different ways that we can look at it as well. Typically, that's the first part of the referral process. And then as we move through the referral process, again, whether or not they go to IPRC, if a student needs an IEP, they will get an IEP. So we do, when we say approximately 40,000 students in TDSB have special education needs, that's students who have been formally and not formally identified with an IEP.
I'm just checking that because I'm just worried if a bean counter starts looking, that our beans look small and they're much bigger than they're reported as. So I'm just conscious that you guys are very aware of that. I just am worried a
Yeah.
supervisor might not know that.
So within our student information system, for a student who is not exceptional but receiving supports, we would flag that. So that is part of our count.
To the ministry?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because I know when people look at the numbers, it looks like they're going down, but the needs feel like they're going way up.
Yeah. And they would be categorized as non-identified.
Even if they end without an IEP.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And then the special education review, I guess that's the other really big one. So is it going to be impacted in any way with supervision? Are we still moving ahead with that?
Yeah, there
Is
are no,
there-
sorry, Nora, there are
Yeah,
no.
no, it's
changes.
okay.
There are no changes at this time.
Okay.
So we're proceeding as in our planning as we normally would. And if there were to be any changes in regards to anything related to special education, we would make you aware.
Cool. And then my feedback would be that they put their email on the website where the trustees were. And I know you can't do anything about that, but that's my feedback.
So sorry, can I just clarify? Do you mean the supervisor's email?
Yep. So when you
Okay.
look on the parent concern protocol, it's now trustees
I
totally
see.
removed, right?
Right.
So a parent, if they go there, and we're constantly, and that's been a big issue for us, right? Like we've had lots of conversations as a committee and as staff about what that should look like. And now a layer has been removed with seemingly no replacement option to families. And so I think that that's only fair if somebody is supervising and taking over the role of trustees, that they should be accessible to the public. They've put it in an email, apparently that went out through a blast to everybody, but then, so kudos to them for putting something down for parents to use. I think it should go on the website underneath.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
We'll take that back for sure.
Okay, we have Bronwyn, and then we have Latoya, and then we have David Lepofsky with more questions.
Thank you. So I shared in the chat a concern that I had. So for the superintendents for contacts, I'm also the ward community rep for my neighborhood. So I was looking for information so I could share, and there's no email that's visible on the website for any of the superintendents. So I shared it in there, and I know you guys are going through a lot right now, and but it is very concerning to me that it's sort of hidden there. Like I actually dug up my emails and my past advocacy to find it because I've been doing this for a while now. So I was lucky to have that. So I'm sorry, guys, I did share it publicly in my community. So I just I'm concerned that, you know, there's me who's doing that individually, but how many other parents do have those superintendent secret emails somewhere that they can't reach to their community? So if that could be sort of answered for me, and addressed of why it's not there, and if it could be looked into changing. And the other things that I have concerns is that the one email for the supervisor is completely ridiculous. Like I've shared before many times, I have PTSD from the system of our brokenness in Ontario across the board, not just the TDSB and our medical system, the systems with the CRA. This is what I'm envisioning for families now, that we are going to have one email for all of the TDSB and the other boards that could be using the same thing. I hope God not, but that could happen. Who is actually tracking to see if anyone's responding? Like I'm actually going to just maybe do a trial myself just to see if it works, because that is terrifying to me as a parent and who's someone who has severe PTSD and trauma from our system overall and the brokenness of it, that they think one email is suitable. The other thing that I also have a big concern with is the fact that we are not able to connect individually with our communities to let them know as our SEAC reps that we are there for them. I think the TDSB, if it's possible, if we could have our SEAC emails distributed through the TDSB Connects like they did with the Ministry of Education with their blast and stuff, could they have all of our contacts in place of this challenging time to help families reach out if needed? Because we don't have that trustee list. And I also think we should have exclusively a SEAC email for the supervisor or something under disabilities, because we are here, we are mandated to be here because they're not going to be able to keep up. So that's my biggest concern. And to clarify, Louise, also when you were speaking, you said there was a meeting on September 10th that I think David was attending or something with the supervisor. And forgive me if I messed up with that or misunderstood, but I totally missed that in emails or communication. If we as SEAC or our chair is having any one-on-one communication, if anyone could update me. Thank you.
Let me just jump in, and it was in my notes for my opening remarks and I missed it. And thank
Okay,
you.
no worries. Thanks. I was like,
But
ooh,
just so
yeah,
you know,
you could just summarize that.
I
Yeah.
had, when I wrote the supervisor in July, he wrote me back the next day and said, first he wants to be briefed by staff. And then I got an outreach last week. Could I meet him? And I'm meeting him Wednesday. I intend to take to him the priorities you have identified and you are identifying. I intend to ask him to come to our meetings
Okay. Yes,
because
thank you.
trustees used to.
It is
And-
concerning he's not here, and I'm not going to lay
Yeah.
shame, but that
And
is a red flag already. So there
But
you go.
just as staff are noting what you're saying, so am I.
Thank you.
So
And I'm done with
and
my
I'll-
thing. And Louise and Nandy, if you could do that. I want parents to have support. I want us to work collaboratively. We're not against each other here, but the students are and the parents are lost, and I want to see what we can all do collectively to try and best support them in an efficient way. And I don't think this is efficient what's being laid before us. Thank you.
Nandy or Louise, taking that as feedback, or do you want to give any response as well?
Thanks. No, we've jotted it down and we will be sharing that back, David. And I'm sure, as you said, you will also be sharing these points on the 10th. Thanks.
I'm going to follow up with everyone with what happened when I speak to them, of course. LaToya. And then Richard. But Richard, you get Lepovsky first. LaToya, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm on my phone, so I'm trying to make sure I can do this well. Hi, I guess I'll start by saying I can really appreciate the amount of work and effort that staff are doing right now, and the support and trying to, I guess, address concerns as they come up, and also help parents to be understood and heard. My first question, Nora asked, and I think that was answered about the research study, so I'm glad that is still ongoing. And then the other one is in regards to the funding, and especially in the climate that we are in, a lot of parents, they are in a state of fear, especially parents with children with disability, and even more so parents, or not even more so, but also just having that other lens as well of parents who have kids with intersectional identity, whether it is something across gender or across race. There is a state of fear almost. And I guess my question is, what are we doing, given what's TDSB doing, given that this climate, it is different for many parents who are here today. I know the board was taken over before, so some parents had already experienced that. But, today's parents, this is almost like an environment of fear. There's a lot of mixed messages going through the news, such as, the approach of putting more police in schools, and that fear in a climate where we're seeing our kids with disability are under-supported. We have children who have meltdowns, and with an intersectional lens, their meltdowns might be looked at as just anger, and how are they going to be treated in that instant, and what TDSB is doing to help educate the staff to ensure that we are really addressing disability and understanding disability, and recognizing that the staff might need an additional support system to ensure that they're not penalizing our children who are disabled and are exhibiting some disability trait. And in addition to that, just on the thing of funding, there seems to be, that conversation that goes up about funding, about TDSB going above and beyond. And I do believe that that does happen and that we are severely, that, we are underfunded when it comes to special education. But there's also different languages, which are, the information is available on the Ministry of Education website, such as with the SEA and understanding when SEA claims are getting made or when they should be made. I've had cases where I had to help with other parents, help them to build that understanding to say no, SEA for your children is something that, is a completely different process than the whole approach to, principals saying that they're underfunded and cannot and having a hard time providing support. So also given that there's still the existence of the knowledge gap tied into that fear and disappointment and some negative emotions, what TDSB can be doing to ensure that we're addressing some of that misunderstanding with the staff. The staff are human. I'm not here to knock against the staff. They're doing their best, but the climate that we're in, we don't have the safety net of the trustees for parents to lean back on when there is a misunderstanding. There isn't that person, and that email inbox is going to become very full. I've already had so many people telling me that they're emailing, all these different individuals, and they don't know if they're going to be heard and understood. So, what TDSB is doing now that's different and recognizing that something different needs to be done to ensure that the staff themselves, yes, they have gone through training, but acknowledging that they are human, there is a factor of fear, and parents also are afraid, and how we help to navigate that the right supports are coming through. And just a point of clarification in terms of, not even clarification, but a statement in terms of, the information with regards to some kids receiving support while they do not have IEP. I have spoken to so many different teachers as well on this. I remember one teacher shared how she had to put in support for a Caribbean parent despite some of the support, because that child was experiencing, challenges and needed the support, but had to handhold the parent. And it took 2 years to get the parent to the point beyond the fear of the unknown of what is understood as label versus what is understood as diagnosis. And so sometimes it does need to happen, because there are still people where it is that there is a negative experience when it comes to a lot of the psychology, the psychiatry efforts. And so there is a different approach that sometimes has to be done, but it is within the law that TDSB does provide that support. And I think that this opens up, if anything, that this conversation could hopefully be taken, taken to another level where we have that separate area or just another area where we can discuss and unpack this some more, so that where there's better understanding to the cultural differences that is within the board, and understanding that intersectional lens, that not everyone in the disability community has had the same experience, and that some of these teachers are coming in not having the same experience as some of those parents, but having to figure out how to navigate it while not getting fired. So, it's hopefully we can have that more conversation there. And
Latoya,
that's it
that's
right
great. That's great. And we really appreciate your thoughtful and in-depth framing of the issue.
If I may, David, can I jump
Sure.
in? And I
was
think
about
that I
to
have
say, go
some
for it.
response.
Yep.
So first of all, Latoya, as always, thank you for your heartfelt comments and suggestions, and your description of the struggles and appreciation of the work that we do. We're not perfect. We admit that 100%, but we try very, very hard and care very deeply. I'm hoping tonight is an opportunity to provide some of that reassurance that you're saying is so desperately needed for our families who are worried. And I hope that they're earnestly hearing the authenticity that Nandy and I are saying, that our dedication to our students, all of the staff, our administrators, our educators are just as dedicated now while being under supervision as they were last year. Director Latouche, just today, actually, we had a senior team meeting with all superintendents and was underscoring the importance of really paying careful focus on our responsiveness to our parents who reach out, and is asking that we do that in record time, because we know that a vehicle of communication is no longer there. And to your point, one person supporting 240,000 families is going to be a challenge. And we want to keep the solutions and the dialogue as close to the school as possible. And superintendents can supersede that when a parent reaches out. So please know that that has been very clear direction from Director Latouche, and the senior team are very dedicated to make sure that our response time is very, very strong. And again, I want to reassure families where there is no diagnosis yet. There is no exceptionality. We've not yet started an IEP. We have a duty to be supporting that student as we learn their profile. If there's a demonstrated struggle, we will be supporting with program supports and services to meet the needs of our students. And again, the funding formula from the ministry is designed for that there is money for every single child that is enrolled at the board as part of the special education grant. But again, it's not about the grant. It's about us meeting our duty to be supporting the needs of students under our care. And we will do everything that we can to be the best that we can for them. Thanks, David.
All right.
Sorry, David, I just wanted
Sure.
to interrupt just because Louise didn't get the opportunity to respond, just about the superintendent thing specifically. Is that just an oops on the website that reassure me, but why are the emails not there? Just
yeah,
please
you know
explain
what?
it to me.
It's
I want to know more.
Hi, welcome back to school. It's
Yeah.
honestly, it is a bit of a technical thing. When we post emails, what happens? So I'm going to take that
Yeah,
back.
that's like top priority, because
Okay.
I totally am. I loved everything you said, and I'm like rooting for it. But if there's no
You
email on
want
the
to see
website,
those email
I
addresses.
want to see those there, please. And then,
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
I'll take that
That's
away.
the golden
Okay?
thing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for raising that. Yeah, you can't really expect people to draw solace out of the avenue of bringing their complaint to the superintendent if there's no way to email the superintendent. And so we need to deal with that, and we need to deal with it fairly quickly. I'm going to do just 2 or 3 really quick things and then over to Richard, and others who want to chime in, just signal to Tracy and she'll put you on the speakers list. Has probably to Louise, but either of you, has the Ministry of Education issued any directions, policy, practice, suggestion about how SEACs are to work, or the status of SEAC in boards that are under supervision?
Thanks, David. In terms of staff working with SEAC, we will continue to work with SEAC in the same way that we have been. So our working groups, our 10 meetings, and the like. So there has not been any direct instructions for staff and SEAC to be working differently.
Okay, so the ministry hasn't really spoken to the issue at all. They just left it to you to carry on as is. If that's right, if under the regulations, as I mentioned earlier, when there were trustees, if we passed a motion with a recommendation addressed to the trustees, we got to speak to them and we sent it to them. we've always, of course, taken the opportunity to give our input to staff first and see if that can, and only go to the trustees when we needed to, because we felt something wasn't resolved. We could continue doing that with a supervisor and simply address our recommendation to the supervisor. And that's the way I would intend to proceed, and to ask under the regulations for a chance to be heard by the supervisor, just as I asked of the trustees before that. So just to let people know how we want to go. Another thing, and to Louise and Nandy, I'm going to ask if you just take this back and reconsider it. Last year, for the benefit of anybody watching, if you don't know this, last November, we held a very successful town hall for parents of students with disability or special education needs. We worked collaboratively with staff. It was a really big success. We heard very wrenching stories, but it was important for people to be able to come forward and tell us their stories and offer their solutions. SEAC was interested in doing that again this year. Earlier this year, in fact, at the start of the year, staff advised us at SEAC that staff did not agree to our doing a town hall again this year or next year. We've not been happy with that decision, but that was the decision. But we're now in a new world. We're in a world where there are no delegations to trustees. There are no trustees town halls. There are no trustee community meetings. That's all gone. And at the very least, I think it would be really good if SEAC were again to hold a parents' town hall, very much like the last time. We could do it in a way that minimizes staff, burdens on staff and cost and all that. We know how to do it. We know how to do it successfully. I've even been consulted after we did it by some other SEACs or boards about how they might do it, because they wanted to learn from what we did. I don't want to put Louise or Nandy on the spot and say, will you agree right now? I'd love it if you did, but I will be raising this with the supervisor on Wednesday. I would be delighted if staff were, and he no doubt will turn to staff and say, well, what are your thoughts? I would really be delighted if staff were to become supportive of this in light of the new world we're in. So let me just leave that with you as a request for you to consider. Richard.
Thank you, David. Just gonna get my camera on here. Hopefully, there we go. Okay, I think lower my hand. Very quick 2 questions. I guess the first one is, in terms of the supervisor's email address, is communication with the supervisor by email or otherwise private, or is it being screened by TDSB staff? And second part of that question is, where is the supervisor physically located? Is the supervisor 100% of the time at a TDSB office? Is he at a government building? You know, where does the operation occur from? And the last question was, curious to know what the impact is on senior staff's day in terms of shift in their time allocation to dealing with matters of the supervisor, as opposed to directly matters involving the students with special education needs. And I don't mean questions from the supervisor about special education needs specifically, but just how much time has been lost by staff as a result. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for the questions, and lovely to see you. Welcome back to school. So the supervisor does work in the TDSB 50/50 office. He has an office where the trustee area is. I don't have a schedule, but I think like other members of senior staff, sometimes we'll have briefings where he's working off-site, and other times in attendance at 50/50. As far as the impact on our day, I would say certainly we've supported briefings to help him be familiar with the files at hand. But honestly, Richard, I would say I've not negatively seen an impact because we're gaining in other areas where we'd be focusing on supporting a trustee query or what have you. So it's I would say it's a net function. For Nandy and I, our focus remains on supporting situations with students who were learning about profiles. So that really hasn't changed, and our focus is being maintained on supporting the students in the system and our staff. At some point when I'm excited to talk to you about work from Nandy and Debbie and the entire special education team. For the first time, we had mandatory training for all administrators, 2 days, 2 sessions. I should say 2 half days for all of our leaders, principals, and vice principals on the topic of special education. So we were really, really excited about that, and hoping that is going to be an annual event for us to go deeper in learning across the system for our leaders. So Richard, did I miss something? I probably did.
Yeah, just one, I guess, question or part of the question. The first one was in terms of the.
Richard, I'm just going to interrupt for 1 sec. Jean-Paul will be after Richard and then Jessica, just so you know. Go ahead, Richard.
Thank you, David. So just in terms of the supervisor's email, are those private, confidential?
Yeah, thank you. Important question.
Screened?
So TDSB staff are not in any way screening emails that are sent from anyone to that email address. I don't know whether Rohit has an executive assistant who may be supporting. That would be very typical for any member of a senior team, but I can't speak to that. Sorry, Richard, I don't have that detail.
That's good. Thank you very much, Louise.
Okay, Jean-Paul.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. And, thanks to Louise and Nandi for all the, for responding to some of the questions that we have here. One thing that I wanted to, I'm sorry if I missed it. Did you have a formal briefing, on special education with the supervisor? If so, can you please share, exactly what, you told him, and also share the background that the material that you used to brief him about special education and some of the challenges that the student with special need will face, and what you have been doing, what you expect from him to support you and continue to do exactly what you want to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Jean-Paul. Louise?
Thanks, David, and hi, Jean-Paul. Lovely to hear your voice, and I hope you and your family are well. We did give a briefing to the supervisor in regards to the special education plan, and Nandy predominantly led that in the summer. And what I want to reassure SEAC, and we didn't really have a chance to talk about this when you were first speaking, David, is that we absolutely shared SEAC's opinions and concerns that were voiced so eloquently, not only at the SEAC meeting was that May or June, but also to the board in regards to concerns about the changes to the class sizes for our diagnostic kindergarten and our junior level ISP for students with mild intellectual disability. And the change of those class sizes, predominantly for the DK class. So please know that the perspective of SEAC absolutely was shared and considered. So that is the only briefings that we've had, Jean-Paul. But what I will say is you can understand that when staff brief the supervisor or have meetings, there will be times where what is discussed has to remain confidential and is protected. Because why? Because sometimes we're talking about legal analysis and so on. So I can't, Jean-Paul, always come as transparently as you know me to do. So I give that as a caveat that I think that you will certainly understand.
Okay, Jean-Paul, any follow-up? No, here we go.
Yes, thank you, David, for the opportunity. I honestly don't understand how, and, staff, briefing the supervisor or, the head of an organization, talking about, some of the policy issues, some of the challenge that the students with special needs are facing will become a legal issue. Honestly, I don't understand that, because I'm also familiar with briefing, a minister when we have a new minister, and some of the, the agency that we work with, we are we can share exactly some of the challenge, because these are known, and it's in case of, it's
Let me
something
clarify. Let me clarify, Jean-Paul. I don't want. I can tell you're getting concerned and upset. So, what you just described, I can be sharing with you. It's elements that become, if I needed to get a legal opinion about a perspective or something sensitive, I wouldn't be able to disclose that. Does that make sense? But to be talking about our data, the number of suspensions and how many students with special education needs experience suspensions, all of those kinds of things that we talk about at SEAC and the reports that we share with you, absolutely. Those we could articulate were part of what we shared.
Yeah, sorry, David, speaking. An example would be, I'm pretty sure that you have, for him to kind of overturn the board of trustee decision about class size, you probably provide him with a rationale, before making his decision. Those are some of the things that,
Yeah, and Jean-Paul, yes, absolutely. I don't want to repeat. You would have heard those arguments that Nandy and I put forward in at the SEAC meeting, and if you listen to the board meeting, so all of that would have been reiterated to the supervisor, as well as SEAC's opposition and the reason why.
Thank you so much, both of you. I wanted this to be more of a conversation, and it is. And that's really good. One thing I would just comment, if I may, is this: in terms of the decision the supervisor made overturning the board of trustees on approving the special education plan, the order he issued, he recited what he said he relied on, if I remember correctly, and it didn't include, or considered, and it did not include our written submission. I'm confident that a professional public servant like Louise would convey the arguments against the position they're putting. The only thing is that I feel comfortable that it's better for the decision maker to hear from the folks who actually are pitching that position before the supervisor decides between the staff position, which is on the other side. And that's not the fault of staff. I'm not faulting staff. I'm just saying you really need to allow the two different points of view to be argued by the parties who have those conflicting points of view. Not ask one person to argue both sides, one which respectfully they don't agree with. Before we go to Jessica, I just want to ask one other thing, and this is perhaps in the way, Louise, of asking if you'd be prepared to reconsider a position. And I think the Staff Action Plan Working Group next meeting, which we need to schedule, is the perfect place for this. And this is rooted in the questions we tabled. This committee has been asking the board for some time to devise some kind of improved and new avenue for parents to be able to raise concerns if they think their child's disability or special education related needs are not being met. Not as an end run around the concerned parents protocol, but as an elaboration on it. And before the summer, we were actually going to turn our collective minds to ways to come up with something that's not a contradiction of it, but which could work within the framework of it, because the province doesn't handcuff the boards. It actually gives the boards a lot of scope for flexibility. I think the need for that is more urgent than ever. And I will welcome the chance for us to work with staff, if you're prepared to, on coming up with something. And let me tell you why. It's not just that the avenue of going to trustees is now gone, but it's been replaced by an email to a director. And I don't expect that the director, who's been personally responsible for running the entire board, resolving what the province thought were budget problems, and handling everything that comes up at that level, is also going to have time to read and investigate issues raised by parents to figure out which have merit, which don't, what should be done. What is likely to happen, and there's no rocket science in this, is that someone in his office, maybe his assistant, will just refer them back to whichever part of the school board the student's in, back to the superintendent or whatever. Well, that's not a review. That's not an added step. That's just bureaucracy, if that happens. I can't say it's going to happen. I'm saying I think it's probably predictable that it would happen. This gives us the chance to insert at that point, in the case of suggestions that students' disability or special education needs aren't being met, an internal step, which isn't just go back to the superintendent you talked to, which you weren't satisfied, and that's why you're writing the director, but some added internal step that might help figure out the problem and see if there's a solution. That would not contradict the concerned parents protocol. It may be a way that in the end, this appointment of a supervisor could lead to something good, new being adopted. And frankly, something we'd like. And so I'm not asking staff sort of extemporaneously to say, yeah, sure, here are the 3 things we're prepared to do or something like that. But I would like to have the discussion, and the discussion's not premised on there can't be any changes, but rather let's figure out what we could do. And I'm going to say this quite candidly, as I always try to be. On Wednesday, I'm going to point this out to the director or the supervisor and say he's got this new thing, and we'd like to come up with a way so he doesn't have to investigate all these things. He doesn't have the time or the staff. But these are people who are going to need somebody to help look into these situations and see, hey, in this huge board, is there a way to fix it? I'd love to go hand in hand with staff to him and say, yeah, we want to work it out together. And so I'm not asking staff to agree to anything now, but I want to invite a conversation. And the starting place should be our next meeting of the Staff Action Plan Working Group. So Jessica, you've been waiting patiently.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on one of the points that LaToya raised earlier when she was discussing the proposal to put police back in our schools. At SEAC, we've heard already that students with special education needs are disproportionately on the receiving end of disciplinary procedures, suspensions, expulsions, etc. So I understand her concern that if police come into schools, that would disproportionately affect special education students. So my question is, are special education staff directly involved in any conversations that are happening about this proposal to put police into schools, because it will disproportionately affect special education students.
Thank you very much for the question. So I think since the ministry shared their vision for SROs returning, it was contingent on the local police department initiating that relationship. And the Toronto Police Service since indicated that they would not be reinstating the SRO program in Dufferin, Toronto Catholic and Toronto District schools. So I hope that is offering reassurance.
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else would like to ask something? Otherwise, we're going to wrap up. Oh, Anne?
Hi, thank you. I just had a quick question. I know that the trustees would often be a means of providing education to parents and updates and so forth. And I was just wondering if there's any plan for other parts of the TDSB to do this, or if they're going to use any other sort of groups to work with to fill in this gap while they're no longer here, such as, I don't know, the student advisory councils, the parent councils on the schools, PEAC. Had they considered, how we're going to disseminate information and actually touch base with parents in a face-to-face manner that they can have their concerns addressed and they can provide information in a timely manner?
Yeah, thanks for that question, and a shout out to to our trustees, and some in particular just had this incredible communication network and spent a lot of time curating news regarding our board, as well as a personalized newsletter, and then sent that out very frequently. I don't want to say all, not all. A large portion of some of those newsletters, of course, were documents that we had published publicly through TDSB Connects, which is the main way for our parents to stay connected. But I think that you're pointing at a really important point, is that those communication lines are now no longer there. And we need to be intentional in helping our parents know where to find the information. So if I may, I'm going to take that back and share with our communication team to just talk about that important point that you raise, and how we can be really intentional about making sure that we make that connections, and how we can be supporting SEAC with that as well. I'm going to, Nandy, could I ask you to talk about the website that you populate and the information that you share for families, just for our SEAC members, to help be part of that communication web that we need to create and make strong.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
So, sorry, Nanny, I just wanted to say, for parents who maybe are overwhelmed with the existing platforms in place to disseminate information, is there any thought of how to provide information in a smaller way so that parents who either, are marginalized or vulnerable, or see the education system as a threat, or perhaps as, not trustworthy? How do you bring information to groups such as those, like LaToya was saying, without just only focusing on media platforms or online platforms?
And make intimate spaces for vulnerability and deeper conversations. So I'll prepare and share with SEAC some of the work from our senior manager of mental health, Shameen Sandhu. She is our our lead social worker and is responsible for making connections with outside agencies. And there are many, many evening events that she helps to organize. So I think it would be helpful for you to know about that, and again, put that out to your community groups, and we can spread those opportunities far and wide. But I agree, they're such important places for families to come. Sorry, Mandy, over to you.
Thanks. So our website is full of information, but to your point, we do also ask principals to publicize in their blogs or newsletters or whatever it is that a principal might choose to send home. And we do know that parents read those. When parents get something from a principal or a school, they will read those ones for sure. So we do, for example, publicize. We have a parent newsletter that we ask principals to share. We also have, I would call them formal parent engagement sessions throughout the school year. And we also have informal drop-in sessions where parents, guardians, caregivers can come and ask any questions related to programs and services for their children. Could be transition to high school, anything else. So we have a number of different ways that we try to do that. And we do collaborate and work very closely with our school-based staff to get the information out, as well as posting it on the website. We also work with our communications department, and we ensure that anything coming out of the special education department is in TDSB Connects, which goes out to all families in the TDSB.
Before Latoya wants to just speak again, for Latoya, if you could do it briefly, but I want to ask two quick things. One, Louise or Nandy, when I read the provisions of the Education Act that the province used, frankly, at your invitation last week, it basically says the province assumed responsibility for management and control of the board, and then it appointed a supervisor. What I can't find is any document that recites what the mandate of the supervisor is. In other words, is he sole in charge, or is he under direct supervision himself of the minister or the ministry? And I was trying to figure that out. I couldn't find it anywhere. I've seen press releases about the government's priorities and so on, but I was looking for a document mandating him that spells out, here's what you can do and here's what you can't do on your own. Is there any such thing, or am I looking for something that doesn't exist?
The reference to authority comes from the Education Act. David, we shared with you what there is. What I can say is that the supervisor is appointed obviously from the ministry. Not only does he have the responsibility of governance, but he also has authority for operational matters. So those, some of the decisions that you've already seen are more operational. So I'll say that the relationship for the TDSB to the Ministry of Education is much closer. How's that for kind of describing the relationship?
As much as we could find it, I appreciate. The other thing is, just to the committee, I had meant at the end of my chair's report to ask this, and I also forgot to, but I would like to ask for my chair's report to be received and appended to the minutes. So could I just have a vote on that? I'm moving it myself. I don't think we need a seconder. Oh, Jessica seconded, so we're seconded. All in favor? Okay, done. Latoya, and after Latoya,
Sorry, just very
anybody
quickly.
else on the speakers list, unless somebody wants. Oh, Nora. Okay, Latoya, Nora, and then we're going to wrap up and go to the leadership report.
And just going back to the topic on funding and the involving the police in school, I'm glad to hear that they decided not to, but in my thinking, it probably meant that there was a funding allocated to that. And if it is possible, or if there's any consideration, um, where a conversation could be had on how the school board could repurpose that funding. I'm, these are just assumptions, but I'm, putting it out there that, with special education continuing to be so under-supported and underfunded, that it might present an opportunity, if the staff, could go back and say, how can we then repurpose this funding, or the allocation that could have been or was allowed, to have police in schools. That's it.
I'll take that back, LaToya. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Nora, you had another question?
Yes, thank you. So part of it's a compliment. I did want to say that, I think we often pressure you about transparency and then we don't give, and it's always never enough because we want so much. And then I take a moment and I watch other school board SEAC meetings, or other school boards minutes, and then I'm sort of thankful that you share what you share. So in the spirit of continued transparency, so when changes to decisions that traditionally would have gone to the Board of Trustees, they will be published somewhere, correct? Like, so there will be a published notice when the supervisor makes a change to an existing structure or policy or process or procedure. And will that be made public, just like the way the Board of Trustees meetings were all made public, et cetera?
Yeah, look, they are, Nora, look for agendas and minutes under leadership. And there's one posting now for July for the decisions made by the supervisor. And as more come, that's where they'll be posted.
Thank you so much. And then my last question is a little less about the supervisor and a little more about your work, your hard work about the professional learning.
Yeah, well, thanks for the compliment, by the way. Carry on.
No worries. I've been watching other school boards and then I come back and go, wow. You talked about the mandatory training, and what I was hoping was to even hear the learning goals. So sometimes the SEAC, we push and we push and we push. Like you've heard us all talk about, we want learning.
Yeah,
and then you come and you share that you do learning, but I think all of us are like, so what was in that?
So you're going to be so, you're going to want to know it all. And that is awesome. And I'm hoping that you're going to be really thrilled. And it's the beginning, again, of something that we're hoping is continuing in multi-formats. I think Mandy's going to talk about it in the leadership report. And her first slide was learning goals, Nora.
Okay, perfect. I just, I want to put that in there because if things are coming back to trustees, because that looks like it's the final line in the parent concern protocol, I just want to know what they learned about us so they'd have answers. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to wrap up for a couple of minutes and then over to Nandy for the leadership report, then association reports, and then we're going to get out of here at 9, if not a few minutes early. I'm a social change guy. I look at every situation and go, how do we make it better? How do we use the circumstances we got to make things better? We didn't invent this scenario, neither did these staff. We're in this scenario, good or bad, whatever people may think of it. There are opportunities for us to improve things for students with disabilities and special education needs. Look at some of the things we've talked about. We've heard that the board needs to look at maybe a new kind of communications blitz, a new way to get information in bite-sized format to parents. That would be great. That's also something we've been pushing for as a new communication strategy, so parents know what's available for their kids and how to access it. We've identified and discussed the fact that there's going to need to be something done for parents who've got a complaint, can't get it resolved at the superintendent level. Just writing an email address and flooding one individual with these kinds of things is no solution if they just get referred back to the very same people. They're like, let's not bother them with that if that's what they're going to be. This has created an opportunity for us. We had a great town hall last year. Staff have been, for their reasons, reluctant to do it again. We have a new world in front of us where it's more important than ever. Let's take a new look at that. We've had a world in which up until now, the province said they're giving more money than ever. The school board said you're not giving us enough. And our kids and parents were caught in the middle. That's over. The province can't blame trustees. They're running it. This is our chance for the board's requests for the resources they need to actually be communicated up. But as well, we've been ourselves pushing to get barriers in the school board, recurring disability barriers torn down. This is a chance to maybe get that to move more quickly. It'll help all our kids. If the supervisor's mandate is to save money, getting rid of barriers against students with disabilities saves money. Also happens to help kids, respects their rights and so on. So I'm really eager for us to roll up our sleeves to try to use this opportunity as a chance to improve things. At the same time, I think we as SEAC members have a new responsibility, one we didn't ask for, but we have a responsibility to our province as individuals. There's a debate going on outside about whether trustees should be abolished, whether we should have 4 school boards because bigger is somehow better or something. Their columnists saying, who needs all these elected people anyway? Others are saying, no, it's vital. We are closer to the system. Those folks are all entitled to their views, but we have a unique perspective to give from people who've been trying to advocate for kids with disabilities. For example, and I'm just speaking as me, and I invite you to think about this. I happen to think that the merger of the TDSB 25 years ago into one board was a terrible mistake. It's too big. If anything, I think our kids would be better served if we had some centralized services, but we were operated as a series of smaller boards. Now, others may completely disagree, but our perspective at this committee, after the years of our efforts in working with staff and trying to get, and working with trustees, I think we've got a message to share. And what I want to encourage you to do, I'm not saying that SEAC should pass a motion to the province on how to restructure the education system. We got enough to worry about here. But I do think you as individuals and I have an added platform and opportunity to share our experience as the province debates this. And I do encourage you to consider doing that. Now, our next SEAC meeting is going to not be this open thing. We're going to go back to, we've got agenda items that spill over from last spring. There are other things you want to raise. We're getting back to that kind of business, but everything we've done here is going to fuel that and help reinforce it. And I thank everyone, staff and participant and SEAC members for what I think was a great discussion. And Nandy, if I could just turn it over to you for your leadership report, that would be great.
Thanks. I recognize that tonight it was really important to hear from SEAC members. Moving forward, David, I'd really ask if I can get a bit more time for the leadership report, not just for me, but for SEAC members who might have questions about any of the items in the report. So within a minute, as it's 8:54, and I know we have association updates to do as well. As shared in the leadership report, the special education plan is now, well, has been posted since July on the website, as is the requirement from the ministry. We held 2 half-day sessions on August 19th and 21st, mandatory professional learning for all superintendents, principals, and vice principals in the TDSB. the sessions focused on welcoming all students. So you've shared over and over, SEAC, about families saying, we can't, schools saying we can't support your child here. So we started off with, before students can belong, they need to feel welcomed. So we looked at mindsets, how environments that are inclusive and supportive of all students. And of course, staff participated in case studies, reflective activities, and engaged in learning about assessment and instruction practices for students with special education needs. We know that when you do tier 1 strategies, for example, it's necessary for some students, but it's good for all or most students. We are going to be, that was our starting point, and we're going to continue with learning sessions throughout the year for administrators and superintendents. We had a very successful summer school as well, 647 students with physical disabilities, developmental disabilities, and deaf, hard of hearing needs participated in 10 summer school sites across the TDSB, and the goal was to continue to focus on the areas of strengths and areas of needs in their IEPs. Our ECPP summer program was also a success. We partnered to support 112 students in care, treatment, and rehabilitation programs with our partners such as Kids Hospital, Humber River Hospital, Youthdale Treatment Center, Luminous, Turning Point, Springboard. We also held summer skills development leadership program for students with ASD, and 73 students participated with their families where they learned different skills. And it's great to have family members attend with the children because they go home and use those strategies with their children at home. As part of special education and inclusion, our occupational therapy and physiotherapy services also worked with focus on youth funding to support high school students to get some co-op work experiences and TDSB work placements, which was a great success as well. And we also collaborated with continuing education, and 17 students were able to earn 18 credits towards their graduating diploma this summer. We also received funding from the ministry for the summer transition programs for students. And so 84 elementary schools and 19 secondary schools offered transition programs for students to get back into the routine and facilitate a smooth transition back to school at the beginning of the school year. So we actually had about 850 students who participated, and more than 520 staff members who came in during the summer to support those transitions. And we've included for you a project search, which we've presented on before. CBC featured a story on this program, which you may recall is a transition to work program for students with disabilities. And TDSB has been a lead board. We do partner with organizations such as University Health Network, Holland Bloorview Community Living, Toronto, the United Way, to provide workplace placement for students. We also have applied for several grants from the ministry, and we've been working our OTPT services, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, as well as speech language pathology services, to create resources to support students' development of independent living skills. And we're going to be rolling these out this school year to enhance access to vocational programming and supporting students' readiness for work and life after graduation. It's really important we don't just think of the students while they're with us, but how can we equip them with strategies and skills they need when they leave us post TDSB. And September is International FASD Awareness Day, and International Day of Sign Languages is September 23rd. International FASD Awareness Day is September 9th. So I know I rushed that through. It's now 8:59. So David, I hope you understand my request.
We could stay a couple.
I'm good, thanks.
Good. Questions, anybody? We haven't asked Nandy and Louise enough. Anybody? Okay. Association reports.
I just shared something in the chat. I represent Voice for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children, which was founded originally for being a spoken language organization, but we work collaboratively with other communities and organizations. Silent Voice is one of them, and also with World Association for the Deaf as well. You can look at the link I shared. September 22nd to the 28th is International Week of the Deaf, capital Deaf, meaning that ASL is their prime source of communication and not usually wearing technology. And that's just something I wanted to share for our community if they're not aware. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anybody
Sorry,
else?
David, sorry, I also did put in the chat, Nora, I think it was you, somebody asked for the website with the supervisor's decisions. I put the link in the chat.
Very good. And people can Google it. It's on the TDSB website. Any other association reports?
Nope.
I move that we adjourn. I second my motion. Anybody not in favor? All right, see you all next month. Thank you, staff. Thank you all of you for this.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.